It seems in almost every interview I do with someone from the construction industry, there is a discussion about the need for qualified, trained tradespeople. So, when I had a chance to speak with Marty Riesberg, Electrical Training Alliance Director, I jumped at the opportunity to understand the current state of electrical training. The Electrical Training Alliance, or ETA, created in 1941, was made to standardize the training for the NECA employers and the electricians that work for them so that they can be more mobile. They work with over 300 training centers, or JATCs, across the country. Marty began his electrical training at Western Iowa Technical Community College, then worked for a residential contractor and joined the Omaha Joint Electrical Apprenticeship and Training Committee's Inside program. After completing the program, he became a Journeyman Inside Wireman. In 2001, he was named Assistant Training Director for the Omaha Electrical JATC and served as an instructor for 7 years. A member of IBEW LU 22 since 1992, Marty joined the NJATC in 2006 to develop a building automation curriculum and later became Director of Curriculum Development, overseeing curricula for around 300 local training centers. He currently manages the Electrical Training Alliance's Training Partner Program. He holds a Bachelor's in Business Administration from the National Labor College and a Master's in Leadership from Georgetown University. Marty and I are going to discuss on this show how training is changing and where it's moving forward to support the industry. Welcome to Keeping the Lights On. I'm your host, Todd Reed, and on this podcast, I connect with the owners and pros who design, build, and maintain our electrical, communications, and industrial world to explore the best ways forward. Hey, before we get to the interview, I do want to ask if you can help support the show by taking a moment to subscribe or follow, and by leaving a 5-star rating or a thumbs up on your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. Okay, thanks. My begging is complete there. Let's get into the show.
Marty, if I were to visit you, or one of the guests or audience members to visit you in your hometown, where might you take us to eat?
Well, that's awesome. We always break up bread, right?
Yep,
We got to do everything over breaking bread. I think for us, whenever we have anybody in the office, we go to Jerry's Seafood.
Okay.
It's the home of the crab bomb.
Crab bomb.
It is by far the best crab you'll ever have anywhere. No filler, no anything. And it's just sort of our spot. It's a comfort zone. We're familiar there, and then we bring everybody in and really have authentic Maryland at this point.
That's all right. Marty, you've been in this side of the business for a while, the education side. So how has the role of like the traditional classroom evolved over the past few years?
I think really it's evolved in the idea that when I came through apprenticeship, we have 3-ring binders and printed material and everything there. And now we've transitioned to online content where they're doing most of their homework online. And we're in the process right now of really taking that to the next level and having what we call computer mediated learning that's going on and students really interacting with the content away from the classroom so that we're able to, when they get to the JATC, get to ideas where they spend more time with their hands on the material, hands-on tools, doing the applications, so that, one, they're learning a little bit more, but two, they got into the trade because they like working with their hands.
Oh, that's
right. So now you're not sitting in a classroom being lectured to or lectured at. Take care of that sort outside the classroom in an online environment on your phone, tablet, whatever else it is, and then move on from there.
Okay.
That's been the biggest.
Yeah, we've seen that in pre-K to, advanced education as well. Well, what are some of the main challenges with this transition from the traditional to the tech-driven?
I think it's change, like anything else. It's a matter of change, and all of the people that my age, your age, that have taught for a number of years, having to teach a little bit differently. And the problem is with change is, I understand that, at least I hope, I was successful when I was teaching, right? So why do I have to change? We have to create some level of urgency for them. We have to make them see that, hey, we need more people quicker. We need, the technological changes. All these other things are out there. So change really is the key, as you put it there, that we have to understand it. And all of us, almost at a basic level, when you say, Todd, you have to change what you're doing, immediately you've got like this psychological reaction. No, you can't tell me.
Yeah.
And that's really our biggest thing is we can't say that those instructors haven't been successful. So we have to really coach through it and work through it, really define it and show the benefits of this change for them. And change is one.
Yeah.
So that's been our biggest.
How is the, there's some thought like, so, okay, maybe you're not printing these binders and these huge books. Is the cost an impediment to this, like transitioning, or is there more cost, or how's that working?
It's roughly the same. The problem is, to your point, we don't have that printed stock anymore.
Okay.
But it's harder to make online content than it is to put a Word doc on a piece of paper and print it out.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a wash. I think from the student standpoint, there's really not much difference in cost. But there are advantages, and I think that's one of the primarily interesting things that we see here is that it's not necessarily the students that have a problem with this. The students love it.
Yeah.
In fact, they tell us, what took you so long?
Right.
How come you're not already doing this? We grew up this way. It's people you're not my age that are saying, well, wait a minute, we're pretty used to what we were doing before. And that's really the big change. The students embrace it and love it.
Are the training centers have to invest in more computers and technology themselves? Is that maybe a cost that's involved with this?
Well, certainly when we went to blended learning, that was a big, and we did about 8-10 years ago and made that switch.
Okay.
And the big thing then was, how much internet am I going to need? How much bandwidth am I going to need?
Sure.
At this point, we were concerned when we made the switch, does every student have a laptop? Now the question is, it's a moot point, right? They're all moving towards gaming and all these other things. They're like, well, when are you going to have your content in that VR headset? Because I'm playing games that way.
Sure.
So that's sort of the next potential evolution where we'd look.
Okay. Yeah. We'll
Down the road towards those sort of things.
Yeah. We'll touch on that in a few minutes here. I've heard of something called the flipped classroom. I wonder if you could maybe explain how this kind of what does that mean, and then maybe explain how this model is different from traditional learning environments and the challenges it presents.
Yeah, a flipped classroom is really just the juxtaposition or switching of the roles, where when we were in grade school or high school, we had our learning take place when we were in the classroom. And then we would go home and do some homework and come back and get lectured at or lectured to. Again, this flipped classroom idea is that we can use the technology through animations, through video, through all the other things that have that learning take place apart from the classroom, so that when I'm in the classroom, the instructor's role is to remediate for me. Hey, Todd, I didn't understand that lesson. I got stuck here. Can you help me out? You're the journey level worker. You're the instructor. You've been through this. You can tell me at that point, well, look, you made a little mistake over here. And it falls the way through. So flipping of the classroom is changing the role of the instructor and the student in the time that they're together. Really flipping what they do.
Okay. Well, that's really good. Yeah. So you read it and you go apply it and make corrections. And of course, that stuff's available full time or on demand, right? So like
asynchronous.
Yeah. So I can learn it, try it, and then I can go back and look about like, okay, here's what I messed up or did right.
The beauty of it is anytime, anywhere, that asynchronous thing is, I can learn when I feel that I'm ready to learn. Not when you're ready to teach me, when I'm ready to learn.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big advantages of the flipped classrooms, is that ability to really on demand do what you want when you need it. So,
okay. Flip the next page. Well, I think we've seen some different, the new generation of people coming up have a little bit of different skill sets than maybe what was available. I hate to say this when you and I were going through school, but the old generation, that sounds weird.
Yeah. We're the old guys now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm going to start that question over again. Okay. I don't like the way I did that. With today's environment, with the new generation of available workforce, their skill sets they're coming into the schooling with, and also the struggle to find enough workers to do the work. How's this impacting what contractors are expecting out of the training centers?
That's good. That they're expecting different things, and I think it's because we're coming from, or the learners are coming from a different perspective. When we grew up, we were hands-on on everything. I know my own kids, they're not really very good with hammer in their hand or a screwdriver in their hand. They haven't had that exposure. We would work on cars when we were younger. They're really good at the gaming and the online piece.
Yeah.
So now when these workers go on a NECA contractor's job site, that's another transition where they have to have now shifted more of that, how to use your hands at the end, how to use the tools to the JATC that maybe didn't take place at the JATC before. That's really what's driving this flipped classroom, is the need to do more hands-on and have more of that hands-on training. You know, for me, I learned conduit bending on the job site.
Right.
We teach conduit bending in the JATCs now.
Okay.
So that's a change or an evolution in how these things happen. And that's why that technology is needed, because we can't spend the time lecturing anymore. We've got to put our hands on conduit and you know, do the bends there in the school so that when they hit the job site, they're productive. Because the contractors, that's the other thing, is they spend a lot of time in apprenticeship looking up, right? Watching the journeyman.
Yeah.
And after I looked at it and they thought that I understood it, the journeyman's at the bottom of the ladder. See, Marty, you go up there and do this. Now I'm being coached from the other direction. There's less and less of that opportunity with the tighter and tighter margins in the industry that are going.
Well, right. So, I mean, so there's fewer bodies to do the work. And yeah, so they can't necessarily afford to train you as an apprentice. They do this, you know, they need you. I think what I'm hearing is they need to be more ready to hit the ground running when they get on the job site, right? And so
More productive, quicker.
yeah, so the contractors need that, but your people coming in don't necessarily have those skills, so you have to teach those. And yeah, so the virtual learning environment would allow you to teach some of those basic skills. I remember one of the tool companies used to have a little book, you know, and it was almost like how to use a screwdriver, how to use, like you'd think, oh, I can use a screwdriver, but there's just little techniques and things. So that's interesting. So that's cool. Okay. All right. Well, we mentioned just-in-time training. We mentioned that. So how does this approach benefit the learning process, and what feedback are you hearing from the students?
So that's one of the beauties of this idea of being online, is that we can do it just in time. And I can get ready to walk in and do a particular task. See, I remember doing that at the JATC in the classroom in the training center. Let me just pull up the phone for 30 seconds here and review that. Now, all of a sudden, that's becoming, bringing it to the top of mind and having it that much more accessible as we do it. And that's really the beauty of having these things online, to accessible at any point, or asynchronous is what we call it. It's available whenever you need it, when you need it to do that. So that's a nice advantage of having this out there.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, the way that, well, I mean, I even do it now. I'm not going to say the young generation, every generation does this. If I need to figure out how to do something, where do I go? I go straight to YouTube.
Absolutely.
There has been someone that I'm assuming is a professional. Sometimes they're not, but sometimes they're just experts in their field. And that's how you learn how to fix that thing in your car or in your house. And I know that professionals do this too, because I got in the elevator with a guy in a hotel one time, and he was watching a video. I figured he was watching I don't know, whatever video, silly video. But then as I sit there, it was just he and I was like, oh, he's learning how to do the job I think he was getting ready to do. I was like, it's kind of cool, a little disturbing too, but you know, whatever. I mean, you got to learn it all. You can't learn everything. So I am curious, speaking to that, what's your view of that, the role of, I don't know what to call them. I'll call them independent just because they're not a part of a school. Kind of that learning that people are doing. Like, how does that, do you think that's a good thing, or does it kind of worry you or thing? So I'm talking about those things that are on social media and YouTube and all that.
I think as an augmentation, they're good. You have to be careful, to your point, with the source.
Sure.
You know, there's some out there that have been, almost made fun of. You know, I won't use the vendor's name, but, all of our students know that, hey, I remember that video of that guy.
Okay.
It's sort of making fun of that. But there's learning in that as well, right?
Yeah.
If you can see somebody doing it the wrong way, there's value there. Now, that can't be the only source, to your point, but, there's certainly, anytime you could augment and see something done or explained by somebody in another way, right? So I learn it fine the way that I learn it, but perhaps you have to see it just a little bit differently or from a different angle than the rest of them.
Yeah.
I know from an instructor's viewpoint, that was sometimes a little bit almost discouraging, right? I'm trying to explain something in every possible way that I can. You can see the students struggle. His buddy sitting beside him at the desk says 2 words, I got it. He's like, what in the world?
Yeah.
So I think to your point, that's the beauty of all of these online, these little snippets, is you're just seeing another way to do it. And again, that may be the stimulus or the last little piece that you need.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Someone might just say something just slightly that resonates with me that you couldn't do. Yeah. So yeah, that's cool. That's cool that you see that as a compliment to augment that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the future. You mentioned, VR, AR, augmented reality, virtual reality. So can you share maybe any success stories or experiments that you've seen that have shown promise in this area?
Yeah, we're interested in doing these sorts of things in areas that may be unsafe, right? So we need to train our workers on how to work, for instance, in an electrical panel. But we don't want a student in front of an energized electrical panel. Now all of a sudden there's this conundrum, right? We got to do it, but we don't want to do it. That's a perfect application of VR, particularly VR.
Yeah.
Not so much AR there, but in the virtual world, I could be in a panel and I can do that. Quite honestly, if the student is going to get hurt in some spot, I want it in the virtual world, not in the real world.
Yeah.
The other application that we're sort of playing with are things where it's hard to access.
Okay.
Take, for instance, maybe a wind turbine. All sorts of wind work going on.
Yeah.
So not all of us can get up into the nacelle and climb to 300 feet and be exposed to that.
Sure.
But we can put them in a virtual world up in that nacelle if we've had the 360 photos and all those different things. Now when they get to that new environment, now all of a sudden, hey, I've been here before. At least mentally been there before. Another application of that we sort of played around with or talked about at least is like on a nuclear facility. You're not going to go walk in the nuclear plant and be familiar with it, but they always have these really tight timelines. Well, how about at the last shutdown, at the prior shutdown, we take all the images. Now all of a sudden we expose Todd to that nuclear world, that nuclear site before they're there. So when you show up, everything's familiar and can be that much more hit the ground running.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen, I haven't really seen any studies on this, but have you seen any studies of like the effectiveness of the transition from virtual reality to reality? Like is there some, I'm really trying to think of the success rate of just learning in a book versus, the book and the trade classroom.
Right.
Yeah.
So the efficacy.
Thank you.
How effective is that training? And really it's about the experiential part. And whether it's really physical, hands-on, or in the virtual world, to some degree, our brains don't tell the difference, right?
Right.
We've been there, we have experienced what went on. Now, I tell you at the same time, we're never going to be able to do all of the conduit bending in the virtual world. I have to feel the tension of the pipe and the bender, my foot on the bender. But I would submit that we can be so much more productive and use fewer pieces of conduit bent wrongly because I took the wrong measurement. I put the bender around the wrong way. That could all be cut down and we could be that much more effective when we're on the real world after we've been through this.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I've heard of kind of been diving into the racing world, auto racing, and that I've seen some transition from people who do the sim racing, which is really good now at a portable level, to transitioning to real racing. In fact, I was just watching a YouTube video about a guy doing that, and it's pretty interesting how effective it is, and it actually works. So
and to a large degree, and you talk about maybe unsettling, but a large amount of pilot training is done virtually and not in an airplane.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
There's very little where they're actually in that. That's at the very end.
Yeah.
So I think that's another application of if they can do it that way, can't we be a little more effective with conduit bending?
Yeah.
All these people's lives are in.
Right. Yeah. And again, a little bit of transition with cost with the headsets and
there's hurdles.
The computer equipment and all that. But I think that could be interesting. All right. Well, let's looking into the future. Where do you see the biggest changes and innovations and training methods happening?
I think just continuing to be open to different ways to do things. We don't know what it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we didn't even consider something in a virtual world to be training? I think it's being open to ideas and being willing to change. particularly because our industry, how much changes are going on in the electrical construction industry or the construction industry in general? Robots on the job sites, all these different things, you know, and there is so much desire now for power. You know, AI is all great, but you know what? There's a lot of data centers got to get made to make that work.
And they use a lot of power.
Yeah, tons and tons. You know, I saw something the other day, and I'm sure all of us saw that, and it just caught my eye, where Microsoft is actually putting a retired nuclear plant back online just to supply their data center.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And Amazon bought a reactor as well.
There you go.
Like at many, when I was talking to someone about, that's pretty wild. And you want good trained people working on that.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Please.
Can you imagine?
Please. And what's funny, you mentioned that. I'm kind of, so we're at the NECA show recording this, and I'm looking over Marty's shoulder, and there's a sign from NECA that says, "From grid to greatness, the promise of electrification." And so we're still on that.
We're electrifying the industry.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, finally, Marty, it's been great having you here, and I appreciate you taking some time away from the show. I know you have a kind of a busy schedule here. So this is great. But what drives your passion for education and training, and what keeps you motivated in facing these challenges?
I think it's the, you know, as I sort of talked about earlier, it's seeing that light go on for a student. Knowing that you are having an effect on somebody's ability to make a living for themselves, to provide for their family, to do these things. It's not about the AR, the VR. It's about really the ability to give back to an industry that's treated us all so well. And that really,
And I bet
you're having an effect on people.
Yeah, I bet so. Yeah, you see some neat stories, I'm sure. So, hey, Marty, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and look forward to posting this up.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation. Have a good one.
Well, that was my conversation with Marty Riesberg, Electrical Training Alliance Director. You can connect with Marty and what he's working on by heading to the links in the show notes. I would love to hear your ideas for future shows. Please email me at podcast@graybar.com. Hey, if you've enjoyed this episode, you can help us grow the show by subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating or thumbs up or a follow in your favorite podcast player or on YouTube. Thanks for listening to this episode of Keeping the Lights On. We'll see you next time. What advice would you give to 18-year-old Marty?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think understand and realize that your career and everything you do will evolve over time. Well, you know it when you're 18 is not necessarily where you ended up in your career, right? Did you in your career think you'd be here?
Oh, yeah, 18-year-old. I thought I'm going to be podcasting as a 50-year-old. Yeah, 100%. No, yeah, of course not. Especially this industry. Well, it's our industry, distribution, so many people are like, I just walked in, I don't even know what distribution is. Right. And that was me, generally. That's the same. So
that was me. I started in another construction trade, and came along and decided that electrical workers is so much better. Really wanted to understand the idea that, while I was working in the other trade, why am I getting shocked all the time? I wanted to understand that a little bit better, and it sort of played itself out.
Yeah. What trade were you in again?
So I was carpenter.
Carpenter. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Great. Yeah. I've come to really love the trades because I didn't really have that in my life growing up. It just wasn't, I didn't have people around me. And so it's just been something like, man, it's a great industry, construction overall, and electrical specifically has been really, I'm glad I'm in this one. So,
and just the idea that we have that whole earn while you learn thing.
Yeah.
There's not the college debt. There's not all those other things that,
I preach that since talking to people like you, you and I've talked for years now, and other people in this, and I'm like, if I talk to any young people or people looking for changes, I'm like, you might want to consider a trade, whether it's electrical or something else, because you can get paid to.
Very good. You're our salesman.
I think it's great. Well, we talked about this before. I like to start out each episode because, we're trying to talk about topics, and the best place to do that oftentimes is a meal. I guess we could go grab lunch over there and sit here and have a meal, but
we could do that.
We could do that afterwards.